From MTN News, you're watching Montana This Morning.
Bozeman School Board decides on a split vote to teach half the time in classrooms and half the time remotely this fall. Some of the debate that led to last night's decision and how each board member voted is coming up. And in spite of strong election year differences, Montana Republicans and Democrats are speaking with one voice about postal system closures. Their arguments are coming up. 6:30, we're back here on your Tuesday edition of Montana This Morning. Caitlin Corbett and Chet Lehman. Clear skies this morning. Not much cloud cover.
Nope.
So we didn't have a crazy sunrise, but
no, it's still beautiful. The temperature is gorgeous out there. 55 here in tropical Four Corners right now. It's gorgeous out there. I'm guessing Elwell is somewhere near a river with a fly rod in his hand.
Oh, that sounds about right.
Fish on, buddy, fish on, and then come back tomorrow. He'll be back tomorrow, by the way. Outside, as we mentioned, fishing loveliness out there.
Yeah.
Temperatures in the 40s and 50s. A little cooler down in West Yellowstone. 37 there, 50 in Ennis. 48 in Dillon right now. As far as your day in the Bozeman area, going to warm up into those mid to upper 80s. West winds 10 to 15 miles per hour. That's causing some concern. We'll explain that coming up in 10 minutes. For Butte, low to mid 80s today. West winds again 10 to 15 miles an hour. That all lends itself for some interesting things for the next couple of days. Details of that in about 10 minutes.
All right, thank you, Chet. The Bozeman School Board voted Monday night to adopt the blended K-12 return to school plan proposed by Superintendent Bob Connors. You'll remember this model allows kids to go back to in-person learning for 2 days a week, while remote and online learning for 3 days. Trustees considered 3 options for a reopening model: a 100% remote online learning plan, a blended plan where students would spend 2 days in school and 3 days learning online, and a cohort plan that would allow for 100% in-person learning at school, but with modified scheduling of classes. For grades K through 8, the vote was 4-3 in favor of the blended plan. The plan passed for high school by a vote of 5-3. School Board Chair Sandy Wilson was only eligible to vote on the high school decision. At the beginning of the meeting, Gallatin City County Health Officer Matt Kelly weighed in when a school board member point blank asked him how he would vote if he were a trustee. He said it was a very tough call.
I'll say a couple things. We don't know. We don't know what this dynamic is like in schools. I will say it's valuable where you can create space and where you can have people separate and get space, that it does disrupt transmission. I also know that having kids out of school creates a lot of problems. It creates a lot of social issues, it creates a lot of economic issues, creates staffing issues.
That Zoom call went late into the night, and there were more than 700 participants in the meeting and lots of public comment. Here's how school board members voted on how to resume classes in Bozeman this fall. Greg Neal voted for a cohort model to return to full in-school classes. Kevin Black voted for a cohort model. Andrew Willett also voted for a cohort model. Douglas Fisher voted for a blended model. Gary Lewson voted for the blended model as well, but introduced an amendment to establish a date in October to reconsider models and possibly switch to a cohort model. Tanya Reinhardt voted for a blended model. Wendy Tage voted for a blended model also. Sandy Wilson voted in favor of a blended high school model. She represents rural districts and couldn't vote on the K-8 plan. Meantime, the Montana Law Enforcement Academy has closed for 2 weeks following a positive COVID-19 test by a student. Staff were notified Friday morning of the positive case and closed following the campus's COVID protocol. The entire class and the instructors that had direct contact with the student will be quarantining for 14 days, and facilities will be thoroughly cleaned. The academy is expected to resume classes August 24th, and cadets will return through their weekends to make up for lost time. Law Enforcement Academy will also be increasing some of their COVID protocols once students return.
We had been training all through COVID, and with previous classes we'd lock them down, not allow them to leave campus. So then I already told the class on the way out the door Friday, plan on being locked down for the duration when you come back, just to limit exposure in the community.
Steinar praised the cadet for being honest and upfront from the beginning about their symptoms and test results. Students at the academy were pre-screened for COVID before arriving and monitored daily. Democratic gubernatorial candidate Mike Cooney says he's taking his opposition to a sales tax one step further by asking voters themselves to ban it permanently. He also reiterated his charge that his Republican opponent, Greg Gianforte, is a sales tax supporter. Cooney and his running mate, Casey Schreiner, said they're launching a referendum to place a statewide sales tax ban in Montana's constitution. The referendum needs the signatures of more than 51,000 registered voters to make it on the general election ballot in 2022. Cooney says the ban is needed to permanently block Republicans like Gianforte from advancing and passing a statewide sales tax. The Gianforte campaign dismissed Cooney's proposal as a publicity stunt and said Gianforte has made it clear that he opposes a sales tax under any circumstances. Cooney, however, says he doesn't believe Gianforte and that voters need to send him a message.
No sales tax, no statewide sales tax, not today, not 2 years from now, not ever. Now let me repeat that just in case any multimillionaires from New Jersey are listening. No statewide sales tax, not today, not 2 years from now, not ever.
The Montana Republican Party also noted that Cooney requested a sales tax bill in 2005 while he was a state senator. Cooney says that was just a request for research on the issue and that he voted no that year on a Republican sales tax bill that failed. Montana's congressional delegation does not always agree on controversial issues, especially when it involves the Trump administration. MTN chief political reporter Mike Dennison reports, though, when it comes to concern about action taken by Mr. Trump's new postmaster general and its effect on the Postal Service, they're all speaking out.
In memos made public last month, Postmaster General Louis DeJoy said he is restricting overtime by postal workers and taking other cost-cutting steps that could delay mail delivery. He has said the financially strapped Postal Service needs to operate more like a business. But Democratic U.S. Senator John Tester says Congress has appropriated funds to help the Postal Service weather the coronavirus pandemic, but that money has not been released.
We've got a head of the Postal Service that wants to destroy the Postal Service. He's doing everything he can do to destroy it. We've got to hold that person accountable, and we've got to make sure the Postal Service is there.
The Republican members of Montana's delegation aren't happy either. Both U.S. Senator Steve Daines and Representative Greg Gianforte sent letters to DeJoy last week demanding that he reverse directives that are delaying mail delivery times. Daines and Tester also are co-sponsors of a bill introduced a month ago that would create a $25 billion emergency fund to keep the Postal Service afloat and require DeJoy to submit a plan for the service's long-term solvency.
I am concerned about that, particularly for a state like Montana, where rural communities are heavily dependent on the Postal Service, particularly for health care. So many senior citizens and other Montanans receive their medications through the United States Postal Service.
Senator Tester said a well-functioning Postal Service is even more vital now, as millions more Americans will likely be voting by mail this coming election.
Not only is the mail important for just doing regular old business and keeping folks healthy, but vote by mail is kind of nice in a state like Montana, and we had a record turnout during the primary because of it. I believe that this democracy is set up so everybody that's a citizen here should have an opportunity to vote.
So what happens now? As we've reported before on this issue, there's always plenty of tough talk in Congress about fixing and preserving the Postal Service. But here we are, still waiting for action. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
It's been a few days since the Big Sky Conference canceled its season. MTN's John Miller had MSU head football coach Jeff Choate's thoughts on a spring rather than fall football season.
On Monday, Bobcats head coach Jeff Choate spoke to the media about Friday's news that the Big Sky Conference pushed the football season to the spring of 2021.
Here we are literally on a day that's been circled on a calendar for 9 months. And they're finally going, hey, by the way, we're going to push practice, we're going to push to the spring.
His players had varying opinions of the news.
Some guys were, let's play no matter what. Some guys were like, I don't want to give up my senior year for something meaningless. And so that was kind of what we were managing internally.
Choate gave his thoughts on the move and the problems that can bring.
I mean, you basically be doing kind of fall camp, winter camp, really right after the first of the year. Because you can't go, if you're going to do it at all, you better have this thing done by mid-April. And then you got to reboot sometime in early June to prepare for the fall of 21. Now, the one thing I will say is we cannot try to force this to happen in the spring at the expense of the fall of 21. I think we can all survive a year without this, but 2 falls is going to be devastating to our game and possibly to a lot of athletic departments and football programs nationwide.
If there was football in the spring, the Bobcats would be at a disadvantage, given the fact they likely wouldn't be able to practice.
Well, our field doesn't drain very well. Our field usually isn't playable in January and February, and sometimes even into early March. So we're not going to really be practicing football. We're just going to be doing whatever.
In the end, Choate said he wasn't going to cry into his beer, but jokingly said the team will celebrate their 2020 accomplishments.
We are undefeated in the 2020 season. We're going to claim another state championship, and because we were the last team practicing in the Big Sky, we're going to claim the Big Sky championship as well. We'll order some rings, have some T-shirts done up.
In Bozeman, John Miller, MTN Sports.
Gotta love that, always looking on the positive side of things. Take those wins, Coach Choate. 6:40 now, a new insecticide might be hitting the shelves soon. Coming up, what it's called, where it comes from, and whether it's really safe. First though, here's what's ahead at 7 on CBS This Morning.
Good morning. Ahead on CBS This Morning, a devastating storm tears through the Midwest. We'll show you the damage it caused yesterday as half a dozen states begin to clean up. Also, the latest on how the coronavirus is affecting college football. Plus, what's behind the surge in COVID cases among children and what it means for getting them back to school. And a majority of Americans are feeling burnt out working from home. Find out some of the warning signs and how we can reduce this work-related stress. We'll see you at 7.